Good afternoon. Good afternoon. So this will be another chapter in the robot series. A series which is quite basic, mostly repeating stuff that I already spoke about in other videos, but in kind of a monographic way. And there are some new stuff here. This is the 14th chapter. It will not be the last one. I decided to split like the last chapter to two. This one will be probably the shorter one, in which I will continue to speak a little bit about the Ottoman era and also the following decades. I mean, roughly corresponding to the British Mandate. And another video in which I will discuss our time, which means pretty much the time that of my life. I was born in 1984, even though it may be just a coincidence that the important issue is that it's the post-Soviet era. It's starting, and also the post-Black Knights era. The Black Knights. The project of the Black Knights was described at length in a very very long videos that I call the Bicycle 201 saga, and it's in this series I speak about events and attitudes that were common since the 1940s until the early 1980s, and specifically about things, actions that were taken by a person that I call him my predecessor. I speak about him quite a bit in this Bicycle 201 saga, my predecessor, and actions that were culminated during the beginning of the 1980s. I was born in 1984, but I have no idea if it's related in any way. I just don't know. It might not be. My family is indeed heavily, I would say, related to the Titan, to the Titan and Earth relations, and this is things that I speak about in the Ziggurat of Ur saga that we are in the middle of it currently. In the very fairy tale is part of it. So this is my origin story, but I don't think that I'm related in any way, like directly, to the person that I call my predecessor. He's not me, and I'm not a time traveler, and I don't know about his whereabouts. Maybe he died, maybe he didn't. Maybe he went to Venus to continue his mission there. I don't know. I really don't know. I wish I knew, but I just don't. Anyway, he's not me, and he's my predecessor because he was a messenger to Earth, and he also had the ability to what I call, the Rabbi Lord Commander of the fleet. But I've spoken about it quite a bit in the Bicycle 201 saga, so just please listen to this series of videos, because I don't want to repeat myself, and I recorded that not long ago. Anyway, the Black Knight project came to a dramatic ending, and I described it in the Bicycle 201 saga. This happened in the beginning of the 80s, together with other stuff. And not much longer after that, I was born, coincidentally or not, I don't know. I really don't know. But the time of my life, is not necessarily, it's not all about me. It's about all sorts of stuff that happened during this time that it's got its own characteristics. Specifically with regards to the issue of sex and sexual transmitted disease, which is a focal point of these videos, of the current videos. And it's got other characteristics. Especially the dominance of the Titan females inside the Israeli intelligence. As you understand, and I spoke about quite a bit in the past, but I didn't speak about the sexual implications of this dominance. I spoke about quite a bit about what's actually happening in a series of videos that I call the Ornamental Monk. it's a 5-series video series. I think very, very important. And so if you don't have access to it, I mean, ask Disney Plus to give you premium access. It's from about 2 months ago or something like that. It's called each video is about 1 hour in average. The Ornamental Monk. 5 videos in which I discuss the current state of the Israeli intelligence in the last 2 or 3 decades, and how the Titan females are started to take very big part in even dominant part inside Israeli intelligence. So I'll speak about quite a bit in those videos, so I'll not repeat myself, but I will speak, not in this video, but in the next video, about the sexual implications or the sexual consequences of these developments. So this will be something that I'll speak about in the next video, and then how it relates to my own life and my own abuse. So now, I mean, so this video will be what I mostly want to do is to kind of like wrap up, kind of like, I mean, things that we spoke about regarding the Ottoman era, and also to speak about the British Mandate. But I should say that, I mean, it's not supposed to be historical saga. Many people are very, very interested in the historical context. Like, they think of this, of me or of my narration as kind of like a Forrest Gump, like, I mean, kind of like, I mean, like a person that kind of like, I mean, is part of history or secret history. And I mean, it might be a valid interpretation or valid analysis, but it's not the intention of these videos. The intention of these videos is to describe the robots, the Neos, and how they are abused, and what's the damage that this abuse is. I mean, what's the horrible consequences of this abuse. So, and I didn't intend, and I can't, like, I mean, try to produce kind of like the whole history of Zionism and with regards to the Titan abuse. I mean, I cannot do it, and I don't want to do it, especially in this context. Yes, I mean, if you kind of like, I mean, I would say, join all the latest sagas in this channel, like the Ziggurat of Ur, which is still ongoing, and the Bicycle 201, and this saga. I mean, yes, you can construct some kind of like, I mean, a very crude secret history of Zionism, starting the Ottoman era, and like I mean, and also, I mean, covering the British Mandate, and also the era of like from the 40s to the 70s, and up to our time. So it will be kind of like a crude history, but it's not the intention. And it's more important to understand like how people can abuse and how did they abuse both the Titans and also the robots that exist inside the body of the Titans. So I speak. So this video, I mean, it probably not be very long. I'll speak again about things that happened, I mean, during the Ottoman era and the British Mandate. I would say that the fact that, I mean, I don't think that the British Mandate in itself was very important with regards to the Titan exploitation. I mean, it continued and more than ever, but I don't know any information regarding like their actual, like the actions that, I mean, the British have done like on this regard. I just don't know. In the past, I've spoken about quite a bit about the British-Israeli relationship in the beginning of, by the end of the 40s and the beginning of the 50s, and I addressed a book that I don't remember its name. It was written by 2 authors. One was Uri Avneri, and I don't remember the other one. It was published on 1957, just after the Suez crisis, and it was very important methodologically because it was kind of like a secret history or subversive history, something that Uri Avneri already had, like at the time. It was an Israeli newspaper man, later in his life a prominent figure in the Israeli left. He died not long ago actually. He lived to a long like very advanced age, and it's actually I've read a book and I don't remember its name, but it's methodologically important because it's a book. I mean, he already had like a history of conflict with the Shin Bet. He had a newspaper, Ha'olam Hazeh, or something like that was always like, in which he always criticized the Shin Bet, and they didn't like it because. So they put him in jail, and they tried to shut his mouth, and Ben Gurion, all like the prime minister, always tried to shut him, and so he already had like a history of experience with the Shin Bet. We have Neri, so decided to do something very interesting, and I spoke about it in another video. It's not like the time. In a broad sense, I just mentioned that he published a book long after the 56 war, that is only a not very long book. That in the entire book is only an analysis of reports from the Israeli newspapers, which means that it's all like, as I say, about and Zura. These are like information. This is information that was in the public, and the Israeli censorship already approved it. So they cannot so the censorship cannot disprove the book, and they didn't. They couldn't because it just took like reports from Israeli newspaper from the 50s that were after the censorship approval, and discussed it with him and with another, I don't remember the second co-author. And this book actually it's got like two parts. No, both are quite short, but the first part is relates to the Israeli-British relations, and what is really nicely shown in this part is that that Israel, the young state of Israel was in very dire terms or very bad relationships with the British, with the United Kingdom, because it was known that even though they took kind of like formally a neutral stand. Of course, they had like the mandates since 1917 and until 48. They had the mandate over Israel, and they took a formally neutral stand in the independence war between the Arabs and the Israelis and the Jews. But it was known that they actually support the Arabs, and they didn't want. They did not approve the Zionist project, at least in the way that it manifested by the end of the 40s. So the Israelis really hated them, and most of the Israelis really hated the British by the end of the 40s. And this can actually be seen in, I already mentioned Hassamba, the children book of Yigal Moschenzon. I already mentioned it in this saga, so so you can see it very nicely in the first Hassamba, or the first of the second, with the red beetle, Jack Smith, the English cup, or the Kalaniot as they call them, that people didn't like them at all, even hated them. And it was especially common in the circles that later solidified to the Israeli Likud, but not only in these circles. It was especially true, by the people that were part of the Lehi and the Etzel, kind of like paramilitary organization that later that many of these people actually later founded the party that is called Likud, and today for a long time now, up until today, it's the dominant party in Israel. But it was not only limited to them. It was also to people in the left, or in Mapai, which was kind of the overarching party, that people just hated the British because they understood that they supported the Arabs. So all this is known. But what Uri shows in this book, just relying on open sources, and maybe you understand why this book is kind of important to me, because I view myself as kind of like a person that's some it's not everything that I do, but some of what I do, I mean, part of what I do is that I try to follow his lines. Like Uri Avner is like, I mean, kind of a methodology of yeah, I mean, I also have divinations and like secret history and like things that Uri Avner did. I mean, wasn't I mean like me in this, but in one aspect I see myself, yes, this kind of like follower of this methodology of just, I mean, read what is in the newspaper, I mean, in the books, like read, like, I mean, things that, I mean, unclassified, and try to create a puzzle of very classified and secret things from their unclassified information. Like, I mean, kind of like a one-man Chatzav. If you know Chatzav, it was, I think it doesn't exist anymore. It's a kind of unit in the Israeli intelligence. Anyway, so what he showed, Uri Avner, is that after the 49, the Israeli establishment, and this book it was published only like 8 years after 49. So it's like, I mean, it's not like, I mean, like after like a million years. It was just after, I mean, not very long after the actual events. But what they have shown, the two authors, is that the Israeli establishment did everything that they can in a very short period of time to delete the kind of like, I mean, the bad blood, kind of like delete the history, so people will just forget about it. So in a short as possible time that they can, to establish good relationships with the British. And this was done by kind of like, I mean, a media control, of course. I mean, this was a totalitarian state, and it's still a totalitarian state, but certainly during the 1950s, by media control and control of the newspapers, and they did whatever they can. So in a very short time, the public opinion regarding the British will sway considerably from like almost like anonymous hatred towards, I mean, neutral or even affection towards the British. And and this was done very, very quickly. This is one part of the book. Now the second, even more interesting part of the book, which of course relates to the first one, deals specifically with the Suez crisis. Because during 56 or 57, it was widely known in Israel that the reason for the war, for the Milchemet Sinai, the 56 war, was presumably because of the Fadayun actions in the south. Now it should be said that this was still the opinion of the establishment when I was in programming course and officer course, like in 2002 and 2004 respectively. Like, because part of these courses, both like programming course and officer course, part of it is that you hear all sorts of like lectures regarding all the wars, the important wars and conflicts of Israel. And the material, I mean, and the people that actually, I mean, speak about these wars are soldiers in the courses. But they get the material from Sinat Chinuch, which kind of like a Bolshevik function that exists, that is very common in the IDF. Like, I mean, literally it means like, I mean, education officer, which it sounds Bolshevik because that's what it is. Anyway, it's incredibly backwarded, but I mean, it's still integral part of the IDF even today. Just to say, so I mean, so it's interesting because, I mean, the material that you can get from like the education officers in the IDF, I mean, of course, reflects the kind of like, I mean, the hegemony, or like, I mean, the institutionalized view of history. And like both in officer course and in programming course, what we learned about like the 56 war is that yes, it was caused because of the Fadayun actions in the south, that the Israelis couldn't stand the Fadayun actions, so they started this operation to clean the Fadayun bases. This happened, I mean, almost 50 years after 56. Like when I was in officer's course and programming course 2002, 2004, and I would not be surprised if it's still, I'm almost certain that this is still, I mean, the institutionalized view that you can find like in the IDF. But already in 57, Uri Avner published a book that completely, I mean, destroys the Fadayun, I mean, theory. Because what he shows very nicely in this book is that, of course, that the war was not initiated because of Fadayun. There was no Fadayun in these places at all. And the Suez War or the Sinai War is not related at all to the Fadayun. It was just a lie that was manifested, proliferated by the Israeli government through the Israeli newspapers. Now, this is not a big secret. It was already proven in 57 by two newspapers using news articles from the time. So it's just to show you that sometimes, I mean, and 50 years after that, I mean, the life of Fadayun is still, I mean, it's kind of like the main view inside the IDF. And supposedly this is the democratic state, and we all have like access to the internet and public information. Just to show you, I mean, how easy it is to actually maintain lies and continue, I mean, adhere to the lies, even if the truth is known long ago. So what was actually the truth? So the truth is that it was a conspiracy between the British, the French, and the Israelis. It was conspiracy against Egypt. And the details of the conspiracy are well known, but we have never discussed the details in a book again that was published during 1957. And of course, this conspiracy could have happened only because the first part of the book, where because of several good years that the Israelis did whatever they can to kind of like change public opinion dramatically from hatred to the British to affinity to the British. Now, what did the French and the British actually want? It's not the subject of this video. The video, just in 2 words, they wanted money. They wanted control of the Suez Canal, because Nasser, the leader of Egypt, the young leader of Egypt, nationalized it. And today, everybody thinks that he was right, actually. Like, every person with his right mind today must agree that Nasser was the good side in this conflict. You just need to learn like basic history to understand what actually happened, because the Egyptians built the canal, and many died like working like in almost slavery conditions, like building the canal. And of course, the canal was inside the territory of Egypt. So why should like the British and the French control the company that control the canal and get all the money? This was evidently a national resource of the Egyptians, and they all, not only that it was part of the Egyptian territory, but they built it, and not only did they build it, they paid in many lives, because it was a huge engineering project. It was, of course, all the workers were Egyptians, and many died. It was a huge project, and I don't know if hundreds or thousands, I think thousands died, and many, of course, paid like in their health, because, so why should the British? No one in his right mind today will say that the British and the French, who the fuck are they, that they should control the canal and like get money from all the ships that are passing the canal? It's ridiculous. So you can ask, okay, but okay, we understand. So it was kind of like a post-colonial conflict. We get it, but what's that all of this got to do with Israel? So Israel is actually what were not the important side of they were actually not that important in this conflict. They actually, they used it as an excuse, because they wanted to start another like big conflict, because after the independence war, everybody was was kind of like it was a huge war in Israeli standards, but it didn't like finish like completely like in it didn't finish like in kind of like very like one-sided result that that shuts all mouths till, not at all. Like everybody spoke about the second like the second conflict. The second war. People spoke about the second war almost like immediately after the first war ended during 49. So it was kind of like a thing that everybody spoke about, the second war. So the Israelis always wanted like to have the initiative in the second war. Not that they weren't conflict between the first war and the second war. There were smaller conflict all the time, but they wanted like to have the initiative. It was very important in Israel historically to have the initiative. It's a major tenet of the IDF until today, that they need to have the initiative. They need to strike first. it's kind of like, I mean, it's the most important like paradigm of the IDF is that they need to have the initiative. They should strike first, and they should strike fast, quickly. This is the major tenet of like the security paradigm of Israel since the 40s and until now, that they should be the one to strike first, and they should be quick. Famously, it wasn't always like that. Specifically, it wasn't like that during 73, which is remembered until today as the biggest military fiasco in the history of Israel. But every other time, it was actually like that. And most importantly, during 67, because after the Second War, people started to speak about the Third War, because Nasser did not, like, I mean, only became stronger, and he had like kind of like pan-Arabic vision. So right after the Second War ended, everybody spoke about the Third War, and it was very important for the Israelis that the Third War, they will have the initiative, and indeed they had it during the 6-day war. But I speak about it in other like sagas, so let's not repeat ourselves. So I mean, for the Israelis, it was actually kind of like, I mean, an excuse to start another conflict in when they have the initiative. So so it was a conspiracy, I mean, between French, the British, and Israel, that the Israelis will start an initiative like an aggression, and like after some time, I mean, the international, like the British and the French will say, I mean, will tell like that they want everybody to back off, so they will enter the place and take control over the canal, and they understood, and that's actually what happened. So the Israelis, backed off a little bit. They still control the parts of Sinai, but they backed off a little bit. But of course, I mean, the Egyptians refused to back off. So then the British, I mean, and the British knew this was going to happen. So then the British and the French, I mean, with their huge navies, I mean, came to the rescue and attacked the Egyptian army. And this was all according to the plan, but the Americans really didn't like it at all. Eisenhower didn't like, I mean, so this came to, all of this came very lately, but I mean, at some point, I mean, after it was already going on, it came to the knowledge of Eisenhower, and he really did not like it at all, because and also the Soviets, they didn't like it. I mean, both the Soviets and the Americans did not, I mean, they were not part of it. I mean, but I mean, when they learned about what's going on, they were incredibly agitated about it, and this was actually one of the worst diplomatic, I would say, pitfall between the British and the Americans since a long time ago. And this was one of the reasons why the Americans started to think that they need to be involved in the Middle East, because until that they didn't care at all about the Middle East. And even after that, I mean, it took them like a decade or two to actually be involved. I mean, only during the 70s they became so involved like now. But and the British and the French, I mean, were condemned for what they are, which means post-colonialist European fuckers. And the Israelis actually, I mean, at first, I mean, the Israelis thought that they can actually keep Sinai, but Eisenhower told Ben-Gurion that over his dead body. so the IDF had to withdraw from Sinai, but they recaptured it during '67, and then they withdrew. I mean, again, as part of the peace process with the Egyptians. Anyway, I mean, the lesson from all of that, in our regards, is that it's kind of very difficult to speak about public opinion in Israel among the Jews regarding the British, because it's weighed considerably in a very short time from like complete hatred and seeing them as kind of like a major power that supported the Arabs in the independence war, which was a very difficult war, very difficult war, and with so many people died, and it was incredibly long war. Like, I mean, in Israeli standards, I mean, it was like something like 18 months, and like 6,000 people died, and which might not sound a lot in international scale, but you should remember that at the time it was only 600,000 people in Israel, like the entire Jewish population, which means that, I mean, 1% of the population died, but it's only like the young, like, I mean, it's like the percentage of the young men that, I mean, that are the people that, I mean, naturally, especially during the time, they were, I mean, the most important, like, for you know, for the economy. So it was a major problem, and so people really hated the British. But in a very, very short time, the government actually did whatever they can to change public opinion, and this was documented in this book of Uri Avneri. I don't remember the name. And not very long after that, I mean, just 7 years after that, I mean, the relationship was so different that, I mean, the Israelis actually set, like, I mean, you know, like one of the big boys in, literally they said, like, it was conspiracy, like, it was coordinated, like, I don't remember in where, but it was like, I mean, it was like a table, I don't know where in Europe, that, I mean, the people, like, I mean, from the three countries set, like, I mean, from French, from the UK, and also, I mean, like a representative from Israel, that, I mean, now they were kind of like, I mean, big boys. I mean, they sat around the table with strong historical, you know, colonial powers, and they, I mean, conspired together. I mean, just to show you that the Israelis, I mean, what I always say, that this state did not establish during 48. I mean, it's stupid and untrue to think about it that way. I mean, the history of Israel is the history of Zionism, and it started by the end of the 19th century. And it's not by chance that I start the Titan exploitation history in the end of the 19th century, because that's where things started. During the so-called independence war in 1948, it was already a state. Like, I mean, they already had military forces, and they had, like, you know, healthcare institution, I mean, that was actually much more advanced than whatever they got in the United States at the time, just to say. I mean, and of course, they had the police and the jails and judiciary, and even academia, and they had the Hebrew University, which was already a great university, I mean, at the time, and so they had already, I mean, so it was already a state. So it's kind of like, it's a mistake, like, I mean, to start, like, discussion of Israel in the year 48. It should be, the discussion should be started by the end of the 19th century, where Zionism started, and that's where I started the discussion. Because you understand that, I mean, if they had, like, the kind of, like, the guts to act like that, I mean, during 1956, it's because they already were actually, they had already, these people already, like, I mean, the ruling class in Israel already had, like, I mean, several good decades of like, international manipulation and international conundrums, and, you know, and all sorts of, like, kind of, like, I mean, and spies and spy networks all around the world. It was already the case, and famously, I mean, not long before, I mean, during like during 1953, I think, something like that. I mean, the Israeli spy network, they had, like, something that at the time was considered a great intelligence achievement by acquiring the secret speech, like, of Khrushchev, where he denounced Stalin. And maybe in our time it doesn't, like, seems like interesting, but at the time it was considered a huge intelligence achievement, like, and kind of, like, I mean, it was met with kind of, like, surprise in the West, like, I mean, so how come this kind of, like, I mean, these camel fuckers, like, in the desert, I mean, were able to kind of, like, to achieve intelligence objective that, I mean, the people in the West with all their might were not able to achieve. But, I mean, the answer is simple. It's because it was not that new state. I mean, it was not that new, because, yes, it was formally established during 48, and the war, the independence war, was ended by 49, but it was actually starting to be established by the end of the 19th century with the people, with the Zionists, the people that I speak about exactly the people that I spoke about, I mean, in the previous chapter. So these were the people that founded Israel. Yes, I mean, rapists, homosexual, pedophile, rapists and murderers. Yes, yes, this is reality. These were the founding fathers of the state of Israel, and I mean, they still. I mean, it's not that like I mean their spiritual successors are any different than them. So yes, I mean Israel during like the Suez crisis. I mean they kind of like I mean they had kind of like I mean already the the audacity to sit like on kind of like the international table of international conspirators with the British and the French, and but this I mean those things was backfired, especially backfired towards the British and the French. Because the Americans really didn't like it and the Soviets really didn't like it at all. And actually the Israelis were kind of like, I mean, it wasn't like written to their, too much to their, I mean, like as a negative things that they did, because they were, I mean, actually so, because yes, I mean, they were only the third wheel in a kind of like a much bigger international conspiracy, and they were only... They were the weaker side, by far the weaker side, and kind of like the opportunist side. So, I mean, people didn't like kept it to their detriment too much, and probably rightly so, because yes, I mean, it was mostly it was a colonial conspiracy. Anyway, it's very all of this is relevant just to say that it's incredibly difficult to speak about like attitudes of the British like regarding Israel and of Israel regarding the British, because it's manifestly was changed in very short time, like, and so it's really difficult to speak about it like in a kind of like objective way. I don't know if the British knew about the gates, if they had like any agenda of their own. I just don't know, and maybe it's kind of like all of this is lost. I don't know, because a lot of information is just lost. So I don't know what was their agenda, if they knew about it at all, if they cared about it. I just don't know. What I can tell you regarding the time of the British mandate with regards to the Titan exploitation is several things that should be said. It's not, none of this is directly relates to the British mandate. It relates to the advancement of the society in Israel, because it should be said that the formal objective of any mandate is the development of the territory towards future ability of the native population to rule over an independent state. And giving these formal objectives, it might be argued that the British mandate over Palestine was incredibly successful, even though no one at the time, and even today, I mean, share this kind of like appreciation. But I mean, yeah, I mean, yes, I mean, nominally, yes, I mean, they took like over a backward principality of a defunct empire. I mean, when they started the mandate during 1917, and by the end of the mandate during 1948, yes, I mean, the native population, I mean, you can say whatever you want, I mean, but I mean, it's objectively true that, I mean, they had the ability to run a state, like the Jews had the ability to run independent state, and they had like all the institutions that were needed. Like as I said, not only the military, but also police and the academy and the healthcare system that was actually much better than the average, even in the developed world, even in the United States. And they had, they had all the institutions that were needed to run the country. So one might say that the British mandate over Palestine was incredibly successful, even though no one's at the time, I mean, had this view, and even today, almost no one will actually, say things along those lines, because I mean, as with all other cases of mandates all over the world, people hated the British because so I don't know of any other, like, I don't know of any other, any example, I mean, to the contrary. I mean, the mandate, like, I mean, the mandate system only, like, I mean, encourage hatred towards, like, the British. I don't know of any other kind of, like, example, but, and you can argue that, I mean, that all this development that happened during those decades were not because, like, the valiant effort of the British officers and the British statesmen, but in spite of them, that, I mean, that it was happened because the Jews, I mean, in Europe were so, I mean, they had, like, I mean, incentive. Of course, there was the Holocaust, and never mind. I mean, they had incentive to go to Israel, and in Israel they did whatever they can to develop the state, and so the development was done in spite of the British and not because of them. I mean, that's what most people will actually say. I mean, I don't have really strong opinion on the matter because I just don't know. I just don't know. I am not really. I can speak about whatever happened, I mean, with regard to the Titan exploitation during these days. But I don't have, like, a very strong opinion regarding the British mandate. I don't know what were there. I mean, if they knew about the Titans and about the gates, I don't know. I just don't know. I do know that, as in all other cases, they didn't. I mean, even though they took the mandate upon themselves, they didn't really like to give up, like to give, like. I mean, as in all other cases, they thought of the mandate system as kind of like continuing the, like, continuing the imperialism that was kind of like, I mean, what they did since long ago. I mean, for them it was another way, like a formal way that was accepted by many nations to continue their imperialism. That was completely unjustified, not only morally but not economically. Certainly in places like in Israel, but even not in huge places like India, it was known to be non-economical at all. But I don't know why they kept to this kind of, like, imperialism. I just don't. It's a big question. It's not the issue of this. It's not the topic of these videos. Just to say, I don't know everything, and there's much that I don't know. What I can say about, I can speak about, like, the development of the Israeli society and the Titan exploitation during these times. But it's not. I don't see how it's related to the British mandate in itself, and maybe it's not. Maybe it was just, I mean, things that already started to happen and continue to happen, and the people didn't really care much about the British. I mean, besides that, they didn't want them to stick their nose to whatever they did, and they kept everything as a secret from them. And of course, everything that was related to security and the military was kept a secret from the British. But besides that, I mean, and famously, some groups like that were actually less relevant to the Titan exploitation, but because they were much less dominant, as I already mentioned, the Etzel, the Lehi, they had, like, a stronger stand, like more aggressive stance regarding the British, and they actively thought that, I mean, they should the mandatory representative should be attacked, like, even like in their houses, like, even kind of like, I mean, in what was generally seen as acts of terrorism. But I mean, it's not really supremely relevant to our discussion. What happened during those but these decades were important because several things actually happened. So, with regards to Titan exploitation, first, in general, after the First World War, there was another economical disaster in Palestine, and even starvation. And as I said in the previous video, starvations weren't uncommon in this place because it was an extremely undeveloped place. But actually, and there was even, like, a wave of like reverse immigration from Palestine back to Europe. But the people in Israel, but I mean, the Zionist project survived this kind of blow, and it's many times, like, when people or a project, I mean, they survived a huge catastrophe. in a way it makes them stronger, because so it was seen that, I mean, yes, they can even, I mean, survive starvations and economical catastrophes, and it didn't end Zionism. And now another very important thing that started to happen during these times is that people started to take Venusians from Venus to Israel. This wasn't very, I mean, customary, I mean, initially, but they started to do it, and not necessarily as their wives. Sometimes as their wives, sometimes as companions, or like just females. I mean, so there will be more females, like in places like the kibbutz, like, I mean, because there was a problem of too many men, as you understand, like in the Wild West, because many of the, I mean, since the Ottoman times, many of the immigration waves, I mean, much of them, like the actual immigrants from Europe, were young men, and as I said, many of them were actually homosexual and pedophiles, because that's why they were kicked from Europe, because people didn't like them in the various Jewish communities. They were hated in these places, and they were kicked to the Wild West because they weren't liked. And one of the main reasons why people didn't like them is because they were homosexuals and pedophiles. This is a fact. This is just a fact of life. But, I mean, why should, think about it, like, I mean, why should, like, young women in Europe, like, Jewish women in, like, why should young Jewish women in Europe, I mean, like, even, like, start to think about, like, immigrating to Palestine, like, during the first decade of the 20th century. Like, she needed to be crazy, and like completely crazy. I mean, to live like mostly traditional, like, you know, society with kind of like, I mean, in Europe, like, I mean, with established like norms and rules, and kind of like, I mean, and kind of like sense of security, and to leave it like to a shithole in the Ottoman Empire, where it is known that, I mean, there is starvation and insecurity and swamps and a sausage party, like a never-ending sausage party that you can argue that it's still going on. I mean, think about it. Like, why should like a young woman, never mind if it's like in the shtetl, or maybe if she's like, maybe not in the shtetl, maybe if in Vienna, I don't know, even more so. I mean, I don't know what's more ridiculous, to think that, I mean, a shtetl girl will actually find like the audacity and kind of like the initiative to live like Poland or whatever, and to go to this hell, or even more, I don't know what more ridiculous, or that, I mean, like relatively rich and educated, kind of like a modern Jewish girl, like, or young woman in Vienna or in Berlin, I mean, with kind of like, I mean, prospect of marriage to, I mean, to a well-off person and comfortable life inside the Jewish community, or maybe Christian community, because, I mean, people, I mean, not all of them actually stayed Jewish, but in any case, I mean, to say, no, I don't want all of that, instead I'm going to the Wild West, I mean, to a sausage party with all sorts of barbarians in the swamps. Why should she, I mean, why should they do it? They didn't do it. I mean, there were exceptions, you know, Rachel Shoret, but I wouldn't be surprised if she also arrived from Venus, by the way. This is also true to Leah Goldberg, but I wouldn't be surprised if both of them were actually Venusians. But, I mean, yes, mostly they were young men. So, I mean, so it was kind of like a way to get more, like, I mean, to kind of like, I mean, because they needed women, like, in the moshavim, the kibbutzim, they needed women, I mean, young women. It was a problem, like, I mean, even if they were not sexually attracted to women, they needed women. So they started to get women from this place, and this is still going on. So this was, I mean, the beginning of this kind of like of this institution, to get women from there and to bring it there, because in Venus there was like allegedly too much women and not enough men, and because of reasons that we already discussed, and it only got worse during the time of the Ottomans because of reasons that I will discuss in a very short while. So this kind of institution actually started to be common, or relatively common, during the British times of the British Mandate, of getting like women from there to here, but not having sex with them, because first they were not attracted to them, and second, it was already known that it's dangerous. And we already, by the way, we mentioned Shai Agnon in the previous video, and Tmol Shilshom Tmol Shilshom is one of the greatest Israeli Hebrew novels, and certainly one of the greatest Zionist novels. So this is the time to mention another Shai Agnon, not novel, but short story, or it's still maybe a little longer than short story, something between a novel and a short story, short novel, something like that, which is called Ido Ve'inam, which take place during the times of the British Mandate, later than Tmol Shilshom. It was published in a volume that is called Ad Hena, of the writings of Shai Agnon, and it's a difficult text, but I recommend. Of course, I read it, and I really recommend reading Ido Ve'inam. It's one of his masterpieces, and I assure you that after you read it, I mean, if you already read it, I mean, you can now read it again. But I mean, I'm sure that, I mean, after you read it, I mean, when you have like the knowledge about the Titans exploitation, it will be difficult for you not to think about the Titans exploitation, because, I mean, maybe it's not a consensual interpretation of this short novel, but when you know, I mean, when you know about these people, I mean, when you're aware of these people, about these people and their whereabouts, I mean, it's difficult not to interpret this novel and the characters in this novel, I mean, using the lens of the Titans. Just would say that, I mean, that it deals with a couple, and more, I mean, mostly it's a couple that lives in Jerusalem during the British Mandate, and that he is kind of like a researcher, academic researcher of the humanities. Supposedly, I mean, presumably, like, you know, of the German, like, tradition of, like, you know, text researchers, and that presumably he went to kind of, like, I mean, like, when he was younger, he participated in kind of, like, I mean, an adventure voyage to a magical land far, far away. I mean, fantastic land that is not a real place like that is known on Earth, and very, I mean, in this kind of like fantastic voyage. So he reached like this place that, I mean, where there was kind of like, I mean, abandoned community of people that were unknown to humans, and that they speak like their own language, and I mean, everything about them is shrouded in mystery, and presumably, I mean, it's part of the tradition. It's like to hunt for wives, like, I mean, to chase like young women that they wanted like as wives. So we chased like Gmula, it was her name, like a young like wife of this kind of like fantastic community, and she ran away. But I mean, she also wanted to be captured. So I mean, eventually he captured her, and he brought her back to Jerusalem, and they lived together in Jerusalem, and she learned his language. But it's specified in the text very explicitly that they never had sex during all their life, that they never even once had sex. Maybe it's my interpretation, but you know. So read the text, I don't know. I mean, whatever you think about it, Ido Ve'inam, Shai Agnon. He won, just, I mean, it's not, he's not, just to say, he's not kind of like, I mean, a fringe author that, I mean, that I found like in you know, in a dusty library. He's the most important Hebrew writer ever, like novelist ever. Like, he also the only one that that won the Nobel Prize for Literature, and I mean justifiably so. I mean, no one says otherwise. Like, I mean, no one that knows even a little bit about Hebrew literature would say that. I mean, he didn't like win it justifiably. Yes, I mean, just to say. I mean, think about it whatever you want. Anyway. So this is Ido Veinam. And during the 40s already, it became more evident that for the people of the Israeli paramilitary groups like the Palmach and the Haganah, that it's best that the people that actually will kidnap those women would not be Israelis. I mean, will be Israelis, but not like native Israelis, but male Venusians that were kidnapped as babies. And that's how the Black Knights project started, and I spoke about it in the Bicycle 201 saga. So it started during the 1940s, and I don't want to reiterate myself, so I mean, just listen to the Bicycle 201 saga. So as I say, and as it's reflected in Shai Agnon, by the time of the British mandate, they already knew that they understood in Israel very well that there is a sexual incompatibility, and that just because of this sexual incompatibility, it's actually made, from their perspective, more sense to actually capture these women and take them to Israel, just because of the sexual incompatibility, because they understood that while it's very dangerous to have sex with them, they can be used as wives or consort, or just, I mean, as like female populations in places that were huge sausage party, like these kibbutzes and moshavim, like of the time, that, I mean, were dominated by Israeli by Jewish young males from Europe, that, again, many of them were actually pedophiles and homosexuals, but in any case, there weren't enough women. So they understood that, I mean, yes, this kind of, like, it makes sense to take this woman from Venus, and so they will live life here, and they since they cannot have sex, I mean, they will not expect to have sex, and so, I mean, it's kind of be like, I mean, a good arrangement, presumably, and this kind of, like, I mean, this outline of arrangement is still, I mean, exists to this day, and was actually accepted as a good arrangement by other nations as well, up to this day. So it started during these times, like the British mandate of Palestine. So now it's a good time to speak about what were actually the sexual problems. What is the sexual incompatibility? But I mean, I'll start another video because I don't want it to be more than an hour. So I will start shortly another video in which I will speak about the sexual issues that were started to become evident during these times, and I speak about, like, by the end of the Ottoman era and the British, and also the British mandate of Palestine.